The ambassador that burned down. Yeah, that was terrible.
Well, cool. We'll get into it. Ready to roll?
Yep.
So today on our podcast, What's Your Specialty? We have Duke Dennis. Duke, I actually just hit him up on LinkedIn. He's been posting some really cool stuff on LinkedIn. Seemed like a snazzy dresser. I'm on Casual Fridays, but Duke has got a lot of insight on the market, the industry. It's got some fresh eyes on the commercial real estate industry in Dallas. And we've just been chopping it up a little bit, talking about where Dallas is going from a commercial standpoint, kind of how his business relates to that, some of the cool stuff they have going on. So we'll kind of talk about that today. Good to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Dude, kind of tell us how you guys started. You know, we touched on it a little bit before, but what made you get into commercial real estate?
Yeah, well, I was exposed to it back in high school, and my dad had me read a bunch of books during summer. He had his own summer reading aside from the high school.
Okay.
And so I read a lot of, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that kind of stuff. And
so he kind of pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, well, he didn't personally invest. He still hasn't.
Okay.
But I know he always wanted to, and he was always looking at properties and looking at offering memorandums. And I think he realized that, he didn't want me to go down the same path. He wanted a different path for me. So he started kind of pushing that on me at an early age.
That's interesting. It's almost like with a lot of the parents pushing their kids into sports. He did actually a pretty cool thing for you and just kind of introducing you into, the financial world without kind of, was it like a mandatory reading? Or
yeah, it was mandatory. So my dad was a Marine and an officer in the Air Force. Okay. So he pushed a lot of things on me, but looking back now, I'm so grateful that he did.
Okay.
There was one example back when we just moved out to Franklin where I was sitting in the house playing Xbox, and he pulled the plug and said, "You can't play another minute until you go outside and run a mile."
Wow.
And then I never went back inside. I was outside all the time. So, little things like that had a huge impact later on.
Interesting. So you said you're from Franklin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of Franklin, Tennessee. This is the first time I've heard of Franklin, Texas. Where is that located?
It's in the heart of Central Texas. It's about 45 minutes north of College Station.
Okay.
Off of Highway 6 and 79. But it's a town of 1,500 people, one stoplight, no McDonald's. Pretty small town. We had a 2A high school.
Okay. So when you say a 2A high school, what is that?
So in Texas at the time, we had a ranking system for scale and size of schools. At the time, I believe it went up to 5A. Now I think we have 6A, but
okay.
5 and 6A being the largest, 1A and 2A being the smallest. Usually at 1A and 2A, you could actually have like a full football team. Below that, you were talking about 6-man football. So, in Texas high school, that's how we kind of talk about districts and rankings in schools in terms of football. Was like, oh, you're 2A, you're 3A.
Gotcha. So you're at, let's fast forward a little bit. You're at A&M. And did you know kind of what you wanted to get into at A&M?
Not in the beginning. No, I wanted to go initially to Sam Houston State to do the PGA PGM program. It was a golfing learning and teaching professional kind of track.
I didn't even know they had something like that.
Yeah, they have that across the country at probably 10 or 15 schools now.
Okay.
But my dad said, "Nah, that's not the route you want to go." And so actually the only school I ended up applying to, and luckily I got in, was A&M. And I was general studies in the beginning. And through the first 2 semesters, or first actually 4 semesters, I had to maintain a certain GPA to get into the business school.
Okay.
And then once I got into the business school, I started talking with my dad every day about, am I marketing, am I accounting, am I finance? And I just realized, after talking it through with him that, finance people, he's like, I think they do all right, with money. So let's go down that path. You seem more like that than an accountant or a marketing person.
That's awesome. So, as we've talked just previously and now, it seems like your dad really had a big impact on kind of your strategy and your guiding light. Did you ever feel like he was pointing you in a direction that you really didn't want to go? Because it seemed like he pointed you in a way, and it seemed like you're enjoying what you're doing now. But was it at the time when he was telling you these things where you're like, man, I really don't want to do this?
Yeah, the toughest decision was to live at home, because I didn't have a whole lot of money. And I I kind of worked as a ranch hand since the time I was 12 when we moved out to Franklin.
Okay.
And so I saved up as much as I could, but it still wasn't enough to live on campus and really have the access, to the campus and that kind of college life that normal people think about.
Right.
So once he got me through the logic of, this is the most financially, good decision you can make right now is living at home. We'll have dinner ready for you at 5:00. Just go do your studies and focus on that and your part-time job. So once I got over that and kind of swallowed my pride, that really kind of opened up the door for me to really just focus on school, and that set up grad school, and then a good first internship, and then that got me to my first real job that I've loved, and that's Metropolitan.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, it seems like you were definitely focused, and it's paid off. A lot of people are kind of floundering. It seemed like I talk to my wife about this sometimes, about the hardships that kids go through are what really define a person in their adult life. And so it's interesting that, it sounds like the hardships that you had, kind of having to stay home and do some different things have kind of allowed you to kind of have this laser focus about how you approach your adult life and, from a real estate standpoint. Because too oftentimes I think, even for my own, I got 3 girls, and so you want them to have the best of everything, and you want them to have better than what you had. So it becomes a situation where you don't want them to be too entitled, but at the same time you don't want to deprive them of an opportunity that may be in front of them. So it's a struggle, because I do think sometimes having less as a youth makes you a stronger adult from a just from a person standpoint, and then you appreciate things more and value things a lot more too. So, so talking about your professional career, you got into, you left A&M, and then what happened next?
Yeah, well, I guess back at A&M when I was in grad school, I worked for one of my professors in his kind of private valuation consulting firm. And then from there, I got an internship with Butler Berger Group, which is a multifamily appraisal firm, largely multifamily, based here in Dallas. And so I interned with them and then continued to work for them when I went back and finished grad school, and then came on full time with them. So I moved up here to Dallas. My brother was living here at the time, wanted to be close to family. And then after a while, I kind of just got this feeling inside of like, this isn't the right thing for me.
Right.
And it was actually probably because of another book I read back in high school called Running with the Bulls. It was about kids at Wharton getting internships on Wall Street.
Okay.
And most of them went into investment banking. And so this is what I do now, is currently, real estate investment banking. And so because of that book, I always had this kind of, image in my head of, I thought that was cool. And so, when I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do post appraisal, I was luckily introduced to one of the partners who worked at Metropolitan Capital Advisors. And then about 2 weeks later, after a couple of interviews and Excel test, I was in.
Okay. So when you say Excel test, what are you doing there?
We had to model a retail property. We had to put together a rent roll, sources and uses, income and expense statement, and then I took a stab at a waterfall. I was not the best at that time. It certainly improved. Okay.
Good stuff. So you're at now Metropolitan Capital, is that correct?
Yes.
So how long have you been there now?
About 5 years, a little over 5.
5 years. So what's your, how did the deals that we were talking about a deal, and we'll kind of get in that in just a minute, but what's your main goal? Is it kind of connecting people, or is your goal finding deals for people? What do you feel like is your main goal as a...
I'd say, providing value in any way I can. Sometimes that's sharing information on certain properties, or connecting people who I know are looking for a particular, piece of land or piece of real estate. And then, hopefully, both sides find what they're looking for in the other. And then I'm lucky if I'm a part of that transaction, if it happens.
So when you're looking for, let's just say, a piece of real estate, are you looking, like if it's a restaurant, or if you're looking for a niche, are you kind of envisioning the deal, or are you getting tipped off like, hey, we're looking for this? Or are you saying, hey, these people like these kind of deals, So you are looking for deals that you feel like people may be interested in, and then you're presenting those potential things that people don't see?
So what I usually do is I go to Royal Blue and have coffee with somebody, and then I tell them what I'm working on. They tell me what they're working on, and I'm like, oh, I know the right guy for that listing or that property.
Okay.
And then I connect them.
Okay.
You know, but the thing is, you really have to go out there and have a lot of coffee meetings, a lot of lunch meetings. I mean, you have to meet with people constantly.
Okay.
You know, I think it was Grant Cardone. He probably got this from somebody else, but he said, you know, I think your net worth is equivalent to your network.
That's right.
So you have to increase your network to be able to, you know, find deals and transactions to hopefully close on, and that'll, you know, benefit your net worth.
So I see you, you know, how I found you was obviously you utilize social media, LinkedIn, and talk about the meetings and those kind of things that you go to. Mm-hmm. Of those posts that you put out, how many of those meetings do you attend that's on that list?
I try to get to, I mean, any given week. I remember there's one where there's like 15 events, and I was too busy that week to go to all 15, but I usually try to get to, you know, 3 to 4.
Okay.
You know, if my goal is to have at least a meeting a day and one event that day, whether it's a luncheon or a happy hour or some kind of, you know, informational thing. Okay. Just go to something where you're around other people, and then talk to the person to your, you know, to your right, to your left, you know, just meet people.
That's right. Interesting. And so which meetings have been the most impactful, do you think?
You never know.
You never know.
I mean, there was one that I went to a few weeks ago, and I mean, it was just complete happenstance that I was there that day. I almost didn't go, and I met somebody who actually went to A&M. He's a younger guy,
right?
And he just seemed really nice, and we kept in touch. And he called me the next day. He's like, "Hey, we have a deal that has this particular need. I can't talk about it because it hasn't closed yet.
Yeah,
but you know, it looks like it's going to close, and that was 2 weeks ago. I mean, I've got probably a pretty substantial deal that'll be closing in about 30 days just because of that meeting.
That's crazy. You know, I met several commercial real estate guys. We are looking to get actively in that space from a development standpoint, mm-hmm. and just building out. Especially, we are probably in the top 5% of home remodelers, and we have opportunities to get in the commercial space. We're just trying to figure out which one's the right fit for us. When you do these deals, do you have construction companies that you have in mind, or does the developer, like how does the construction piece kind of come into play?
I'd say usually it depends on how early I get into the process. So if there's somebody who's buying, you know, an existing property and it's stabilized, they may not be in need there. You know, it's pretty simple. They're just stepping into the shoes of being the new owner. Mm-hmm. But on a development deal, usually I try to get ahead of the deal. So before land is even purchased, and before you know everything's completely bid out, I try to get involved or connect people, mm-hmm. and there's where I can help get somebody, you know, a contractor or somebody into that space if, you know, the developer doesn't have that person yet.
Gotcha. And so, you know, you were just mentioning a deal. I don't know if you want to share the one we just spoke about with the young ladies out in Fort Worth. Are you privy to talk about that?
That one's closed. That one's been, you know, announced. But I closed a deal on Ross Avenue this year, 4621 Ross. It's now being called the Bogart on Ross.
Okay.
It was the former Dallas Can Academy. Dallas Can was kind of shifting their students to different facilities and needed to dispose of this particular asset. They got it off market, and, you know, they got a great purchase price on it. You know, that corridor is really redeveloping right now pretty quickly.
Ross, for sure.
You have a lot of institutional multifamily going up, some across the street from the property. So they got it and realized, you know, it had, you know, great structure, great bones, but the way it was kind of utilized at that time wasn't the best. You know, that you could open it up, have a lot more open space, you know, change the color palette, mm-hmm. just make it a lot more friendly and kind of inviting. And also offer a price point for office space that isn't really around there. So, you know, given where all the kind of the professionals are driving into downtown, mm-hmm. they thought this could be a closer location for maybe a small private or family office, but, you know, at a fraction of the cost.
Gotcha. So how did you find out about the deal if it was off market?
So I cold called I call them twins, M2G, Susan and Jessica.
Okay.
I cold called them, you know, a couple of years ago, and, you know, happened to get through one day. We talked and kept in touch. Turns out we were actually doing business with somebody who was a tenant in one of their buildings who gave us a good reference.
Okay.
And he said, you know, I've done, you know, almost every debt deal or debt financing with these guys. They're great guys. And so, that kind of reference and getting lucky with the cold call, just kept in touch. And then Susan called me one day saying, hey, I got a deal to talk about.
Okay.
So, it was off market when they found out about it, and they kind of did some legwork to figure out if the deal would pencil from, an equity return perspective.
Yep.
And then they kind of brought me in and said, hey, can you help us with this?
So again, I don't know how much you can disclose on these kind of things, but when we talk about, for those that are not as knowledgeable, from an equity, and you offer quite a bit of services with regards to the commercial that I don't think a lot of commercial estate guys do, from a money standpoint. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about how the mezzanine and the bridge and all these different kind of terms you help support, like a developer or on the other side of it?
So in terms of supporting a developer or client, what we do is we help kind of augment them. We kind of act as like a download CFO. Okay. So we come in and we look at their project and we say, this is what we think we can get done, or this is how it can get done with kind of the puzzle pieces you have.
Okay.
So a lot of times we'll go into a meeting and a prospect or potential client will say, I want A. And then we go home, run some numbers and say, okay, A is not really on the table. You're kind of
right.
missing something.
Right.
And then we convey that to them. And, if they're honest enough with themselves about the deal and their capacities, then we can kind of shift them to something that has a really high likelihood of execution.
Okay.
And, then we've just created a business plan for them of how to go about it. And we know the capital sources to go to. Some of the services we offer are a closing department, which is really helpful for these smaller shops that are more entrepreneurial, where it might be, one guy or 10 guys on a team, but each of them has their own, one's legal, one's accounting, one's leasing.
Yeah.
And, they just each already have their function, but they don't have the finance guy.
Got it.
And so with the closing department and me, we can really help, smooth things along when you're getting to a close. But also just from an underwriting perspective, we work on a lot of tax credit deals, whether it's federal, historic, or TIF deals. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times these groups, they don't come along every day. So underwriting them can be difficult. So we just help them out with that knowledge because we've done it before, and kind of help them find the most efficient way to capitalize their project so they can put the least in, make the most.
Got it. So let's just say on a standard deal, how much, this just kind of, I'm curious that way, how much does a developer, let's just say on a project that may be like 10 million, is it highly leveraged from a developer standpoint, or is it based off of the prospect of the rent roll, or is it pretty, equity dropped in there to support it? Like, because I'm curious with all this development that's going on around the city, I'm like, are people dropping in that much personal cash? As a small business owner, I mean, we do several million in revenue, but I'm just curious, like, are people putting in $1 million or $2 million as a down, or are they just because of the rent roll and the strategy of how you guys present it? Is it just, a high equity kind of or not high, like just highly leveraged type of deal?
Mm-hmm. I'd say, it depends on the deal. And this is where kind of, coming in and assessing the deal really tells you, what you can do. So if you're doing, let's say you have 7-Eleven as a tenant, if you have a signed lease at closing, we could get you 100% financing, meaning you don't put anything in. You just need to have that land tied up and that lease done.
Okay.
And so that's an example. But there's,
I'd say you have to have a strong lease in place from a validated.
Prior to closing, we want that lease signed and executed with that tenant, But that's an example. That's a credit tenant. Let's say you have a retail strip center, it's multi-tenant, maybe 15,000 square feet. It's mom and pops, like a donut shop, cleaners, this and that.
Right.
It might be, called a $6 million, deal. I'm just throwing out there.
Sure. Yeah.
We could probably get that leverage to, 65, 75%, somewhere plus or minus in that ballpark. Mm-hmm. So that means the developer is going to have to bring either personally or with a partner 25 to 35% of the capital stack. Usually a developer can limit their exposure to say 10% of the equity.
Right.
But then they're going to have to bring a partner and give away a piece of that deal, the upside, which is why they're really getting into it.
Got it.
So I'd say that's kind of a ballpark. A usual deal is, plus or minus 65% loan to 75% loan. And the developer can put in, call it 10% of the equity. Any less, and it gets really difficult.
It gets tight.
But, there's some guys who have built 1 million square feet, done 1 million apartments, and they say, well, I just want to put in 5% and I'll bring, my balance sheet to sign for the construction loan. So, with guys like that, you can maybe make an argument for one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. I see you talk about Ross. We kind of tour just different areas to kind of get a feel of the city. And down there's a lot of these townhome, brownstone kind of deals.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit more modern, though. They're stacked next to each other, high density kind of residential type places. And it looks like the developers are building these places, putting some, renters in there, and then they're selling the whole deal. Mm-hmm. I've seen that a couple times. And I've seen a lot of land deals, people just getting it, clearing out the land, and it looks more feasible.
Mm-hmm.
People are just buying up a lot of different properties. It looks like same things happening right now in South Dallas. That's
mm-hmm.
probably like the hottest real estate right now, like by Fair Park area. From my standpoint, it looks mm-hmm. like it's from a dollar to dollar standpoint. So we talk about, where you're at now. What do you see yourself doing in the next 5 to 10 years? I mean,
I'd say establishing myself as a major debt and equity broker within DFW, if not, other states around the country. We have a second office in Denver. I was there the past year, and I'm still going out there constantly, so hoping to gin up relationships out there. But,
okay.
I've been a broker for a few years now, and really just want to continue building my, my pool of clients. But I think I'll always kind of be a debt and equity broker. I have some other goals kind of outside real estate, more personal things. I think real estate, you see a lot of things. I mean, you hear a lot of crazy stories, see a lot of deals, see things come together a lot of times. And so it's fun to be around. It's a fun environment. I love the guys I work with.
That's awesome. How many people's in you guys' office?
Probably about 20 between the two offices. So okay. Majority being here in Dallas, probably about 15 with the rest being up in Denver.
Okay, cool. And so we talk about personally, what things are you wanting to get in from an investment standpoint personally, or just from,
I mean, investment standpoint, I'd say I really like self-storage right now. Senior living, people are talking about the occupancies being kind of low on a national basis. I still think there's plenty of run room with it. But also data centers. I've talked to a few developers, and there's not many in that space, but a few of them, and they're telling me the margins and the yields that they're building into. And I know what the yields are for different property types, and data centers. It's like, sometimes 5 or 10x what you're seeing in other property types.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of a risky guy. I'd be willing to get into that. Assuming I have the capital. Usually you need a lot of capital to do a data center.
That's right. Yeah.
But that's a space that I would get into in the future.
Yeah. Storage facilities. I live in McKinney, and storage facilities are popping up everywhere. I mean, like on every corner now. Obviously, it seems like in Dallas proper, there's a lot of apartments going up. So there's probably a lot of people that have a lot of stuff that may either be downsizing or otherwise. Are you seeing it more in the suburbs, local, downtown, or are you seeing the opportunity there? I mean,
I'd probably say, where opportunity makes sense. So it mm-hmm. depends on, what you can buy the land for, and then, what kind of tenant or operator you can get in there. I just closed a self-storage portfolio out in Arizona, and right now I'm working on a new ground-up deal in Alabama. And, they bought the land pretty cheaply. It's in a great kind of residential setting, high income households, mm-hmm. but it's very densely residential. So, there's a lot of people with a lot of stuff. And that's a deal I would get into all day long. I mean, their yield, their spread, or what we call it, is pretty fat, pretty wide.
Yeah. And like a typical deal, what would that cost? Like one of those kind of deals that you're working on, 10 million, 5 million?
Say this one's a smaller one. It's about 5.3 total cost. Okay. And it's going to be, I think, I'm trying to remember, like 300 units, maybe 600 units, somewhere in that kind of range.
Got it. Interesting.
And they can build it for, 100 to 120 a foot.
Wow.
Which is relatively, cheap in terms of, if you're looking at Class A office, the finish out for, tip top of Class A could be $100+ a foot. Yeah. So that's just the finish out, and that's what, a climate controlled self-storage building would cost.
Yeah, the overhead is so low on those things,
Well, that's a big push we're kind of seeing in that space. Is just the automation. There's groups that were doing self-storage before. that started bringing the multifamily kind of mindset to it, where they're pushing rents constantly. They're marketing online. They're also having, automated processes where, you have cameras and remote locations where people are operating facilities and letting people in late at night, as opposed to having somebody on site, on location, who has to go and, unlock the gate, let somebody in, then close the gate when they leave.
Gotcha. So with regards to, as I mentioned early on, I discovered you on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Outside of the networking events, do you guys create any events for potential clients, or you just usually attend your own, or is it?
No, I'd say so. My company, we have a great leader in Scotland, and he has a garage condo that he calls B8 Motor Place. It's a side business, but also a personal investment for him.
Okay.
But like this weekend, it's Texas OU, and
Okay.
he's a Texas guy.
Okay.
So he's holding a kind of a watch party where he's going to have, big screens with the game on, but we're having clients and friends over.
Okay.
So, things like that, company holiday party. Next week, we're having kind of an internal company event where we're going to the fair together, and the people that have kids, they're bringing the kids.
Okay.
So it'll be a good time just to catch up kind of on a personal level with the people I work with.
Those garage condos are in the same vein. I'm seeing those pop. I was in Oklahoma City this week. I saw, I know there's a group in Allen, McKinney, and there's a couple others throughout that are popped up Plano in the suburbs, these little garage condo kind of setups. So those are kind of popping up almost like a unique self-storage kind of proposition, the way that they're built and so forth.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That's awesome. We try to do different, things here. There's the next phase of kind of this specialty content creation deal is called Specialty Live. So the idea is in probably the next couple weeks, couple months, we'll have events from the people that we had on the podcast, as well as people that we've met throughout, and just try to create these little masterminds, so to speak, of people that are in a similar space, but that wouldn't typically meet in those kind of a meetings, that, that are all in an executive level or deal-making type of deal, that we can kind of collectively come together and see if there's any kind of things that we can provide from a knowledge standpoint, content, social media, or whether it be plumbers, whether it be whatever, land guys. But hopefully, I can create a little tribe around this whole specialty thing and grow it from there.
I'm curious what inspired your content creation, or how this kind of track you're on now.
I've always been kind of a leader from just ideas standpoint, of visionary from even the industries that I've come from in the past. But I'm also have a vision, so I want everybody to kind of perform at a certain level. So I think just for my sake, just documenting and kind of being a foodie, and I love coffee, so I'm gonna have to check out this Royal Blue. I just want people to kind of, where people have connected with me offline and ask, hey man, I just got a call, hey man, what do you think about this social media strategy? So I think, my ideas have always kind of been there. Now being an true entrepreneur and doing this 100%, it's allowed me to just kind of put those ideas out there and see what sticks and what resonates. So it's definitely, from a cost standpoint, to have my man Chase here, it's not really a ROI positive from that standpoint. But I think over the long tail of it, to be first to the market and to be first to kind of showcase it, I think is going to present itself well later on down the road. So yeah, that's kind of my idea of it. Most people are trying to hoard the cash for themselves. I would much rather reinvest it into our company, our vision, and what we're trying to get done. And then, again, same on the Gary Vaynerchuk platform. I'm trying to build a honey empire versus it being me trying to, ride around. I probably have the ugliest car out in the parking lot right now, so I got a hoopty.
I'm kind of curious what you think about types of content. I was talking to a retail broker who's well established in the industry locally, and he was asking me, because he started seeing my post as well, and he said he liked what I was doing, but there's other people doing, here's what I ate for breakfast, here's what I ate for lunch. And it was just more showcasing their life and kind of showing off more than like giving information or sharing something that he thought was of value.
Right.
I'm curious what types of posts you're trying to create or being intentional about. Like, I have my calendar thing, and I'm trying to help people who've been asking me, like, what are you going to? What are you going to? And that's why I started creating that, because friends just started asking me, where are all these events? I don't know about this. And so I started sharing that. But, what are things you've intentionally been trying to share with other people?
We've really tried a lot of different things. I don't want to be predictable in what I'm presenting, because I think what I found as we've done this for a full year, I haven't been as consistent as I want to. I need to really post daily. And in a professional setting, people are like, oh, I'll post every other day. It's like you're really supposed to post daily, because what I found is some people are like the videos, some people like the image, just a post. Some people like just various different things. Like I said, they connected with the silly stuff. So as you mentioned regarding going to a meetup and you're like, oh, this is not going to be worth anything. And then you get a deal out of it. You're like, wow, I didn't realize, some of our deals have actually come from stuff that I didn't think would be very impactful. And just at that time they were there, it kind of connected with them and so forth. But what I would say is, as you mentioned before, add value to that whoever you're doing it. And I think, as I'm sitting here talking, we showcase kind of almost in a gallery format a video of how our guys work, maybe a day in the life, images of the finished product, maybe images of a before product. But I really don't go into detail as far as kind of the business stuff. And just us talking today, I think, I'm pulling my Gary hat on. Us talking today, you could talk about how a deal is done and just break it into steps. And for people that are either looking to have a deal done or looking to, they're gonna latch on, because some of the stuff that you talked about today I wasn't familiar with, but it's common sense for you. But stuff that we talk about in here is not common sense for the people that were working, for you. So you're like, oh man, I didn't realize I needed to do that if I had a water loss, or I didn't know, regarding who to call or how to make this work. And it's just stuff that we do on a daily basis that if we shared and broke those strategies down, that it's like a chef. You could watch Guy Fieri cook a dish all day long. 9 times out of 10, somebody's not going to cook the same dish because they would much rather you do it. So even though you're telling trade secrets, 9 times out of 10 or 10 out of 10, they're still not going to do it. They're like, man, he sounds like he know what he's doing. I'm going to let you do that.
You sound like Gary V, execute.
I'm telling you. So it's kind of a mental block, right? Of most people know what to do. Like I took the leap of faith. I got a videographer instead of videoing myself, because I knew it's almost like getting a personal trainer, right? I knew I couldn't do it because I'm so into the business. I couldn't pull myself out of it to videotape myself. So to have Chase is my personal trainer every day, like, yo, what do we need to do? We need to get some more content. All right, man, go out there and get some content, right? And not be afraid of what you sound like, like even he videotaped himself and he's like, man, I sound crazy. But you're so used to hearing other people talk, you're not used to hearing your own self-talk. So you're critiquing every little thing. Man, what do I have on? Should I wear this? When we do these podcasts, usually I'm coming somewhat dressed up. Today is casual Friday, so I'll probably look like a hobo today. But the idea, man, is people connect with you. Like I'm a networker. You're a networker. People want to do business with people that they say, hey, like, he knows what he's got going on. He looks like he dresses sharp, or he's from A&M, or he does this. And you find deals in the most craziest ways. But I would just say is be informative. Like I said, I connected with your post because I was like trolling, trying to get into some of those meetings that maybe I've not even really.
But you're trolling to get into meetings?
No. Well, I say that because I'm not in that world.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I'm just popping up to meetings like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, you're in the commercial space? Like, yeah. So I say that not from a trolling standpoint, but I'm not officially in that space. I'm just trying to learn. You know?
There's a guy in my office that loves to troll people in the negative sense, and he enjoys it a lot.
Okay. I'm not that way. I just don't have that kind of time to do it. But I know some people that do. But with that being said, I mean, I think, that's the reason why you took the time to put together that list of stuff. You kind of curated a list for people, and they're like, man, I'm glad he put that together, because I sure didn't have the time to go to all these different sites. So if you're doing that and you're doing videos, like this long format video will probably get chopped into like 4 or 5 different videos on LinkedIn, right? And then on Facebook, I don't know if it's really relevant for you. It might be, but I would say probably from your standpoint, IG, just showing the places that you're maybe hitting, the coffee shops, the meetings, for people to kind of connect with you personally. But LinkedIn is probably the best bang for your buck. It's best bang for our buck, because it's B2B. And you can't be all about the likes, because I'm telling you, like the 50 people that you connect with are probably more impactful than somebody that gets 1,000 likes, because there's no engagement.
Yeah.
Right. So what I learned in having that little side business 5-6 years ago was the biggest influencers are not necessarily the biggest movers from a connection standpoint. It's the folks that actually are responding to, man, thanks, appreciate that. Like, I think I responded, I said something about a post that you had, and you responded, and I was like, oh, damn, I didn't know that wasn't yours. You know what I mean? So, like, people remember those kind of things, of just the engagement, especially on LinkedIn, because...
I think that was about Capitol Plaza, too.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah, so, but people remember those things because they're not as much engagement, especially on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is still a little bougie from they'll like it, but they're like, why you got time to be commenting? Like IG, that's like their personal time sitting around having lunch, and they'll comment like, oh, nice, house or whatever. But because you're not getting likes, or you're not getting, it doesn't mean that they're not seeing it. Because you think about how many posts that you've seen and that you haven't like, oh, I'm gonna like it. It's just a different personality on there. So, and I've been to some meetups, and people are like, yo, I saw your video the other day. I'm like, what? Okay, cool. So you don't realize how much it's kind of truly resonating until you kind of get out and start going to these meetings. Like, yo, man, I think I saw you doing the Duke Dennis thing or whatever. So it's cool, man. It's a really, really unique thing to do. And honestly, what I would love to do is not have a management company, but leverage just the marketing side. We kind of we're starting a little side company called Specialty Lifestyle that does the real estate and videos and content and that kind of deal for people. Because there's been a lot of people like asking like, man, how do you do this? How do you do that? So it's kind of a pseudo agency for commercial real estate and brand building, that kind of deal. But for people like yourself, they may not have the ability to like have a videographer just running around with you all the time. Just have kind of recaps, you know what I mean? Like maybe we have 3 or 4 guys in here, we round table. Maybe we have Fridays, we have some bourbon or whatever. But whatever it is, like I'm following you guys as updates. There's another guy named Tucker. I don't know if you know Tucker.
Which Tucker? Tucker Carlson on Fox?
Yeah. That was a joke. His last name, what's Tucker's last name? Hasten, I believe his last name is.
I don't think I know him, but...
Hustler, man.
Is he on the resi side?
No, he's commercial. Let's see. What's Tucker's last name? Kaysen. Tucker Kaysen.
Got to see a picture.
Redhead.
I'm a face guy.
Redhead. younger guy too, fresh out of school, but he's killing it. Lives in Uptown. But anyways, I told him he redid our lease here, and he was going door to door. That's kind of part of their deal. And but now he's kind of leveraged up and got an assistant and all that. And I'm like, man, if you were a stock, I'd invest in you, because there's certain people that you can see that are about to blow. Like the reason why, I mean, I see a lot of commercial people, but I know that you're going to do extremely well just based off of your posts, right?
I appreciate that.
Doing
Thank
stuff
you.
that other people aren't doing. And having the courage to do it, because a lot of people are like, I want to do it, but I can't. But I just see your consistency and some of the stuff that you're doing, you're following up and so forth. But yeah, man, I want to get, because in 5 years, right, everybody's going to be in a different position. But if you're staying with that group, right, it's kind of like the Rat Pack. It's like we get 5 or 6, 7 people in this lane and 5 or 6, 7 people in that lane, and they're all moving and doing deals, and then like, hey man, let me holler at Tucker, see if he's in it, or let me holler at Duke, or let me, so everybody's kind of doing their thing, but it's a collective, it's ridiculous, because you have, most people only move within the space that they're in, so but if you have groups that are paralleling, builders, developers, land guys, and it sounds like you do that kind of on a 1-to-1, but it's kind of taking LinkedIn and bringing it to life, where those deals truly happen. Because when you cold call, right, you took a connection and then you found other connections and like, yeah, I want to do a deal with such and such. So just doing that in a bigger way, so that way you have your own tribe versus you taking from other people's meetings, right? And those deals are coming in naturally. And then if you go to those meetings, it'll happen, but you're not so relied upon, happenstance or like, luck. Those deals are just kind of flowing through a pipeline, and you're like, oh, that's not a deal. Yeah, that's a good deal. And they're just happening, similar to like how our business works with insurance companies or Nebraska or whoever we're working with that particular time. I'm curious.
You said you had a relationship with Harwood. How'd you get that? Because that's a big account. That's substantial.
Actually, they found us on our website. We're working on a project right now that there's a bridge downtown, a pedestrian bridge that the roof came off of it, and so they found us online. Established a great relationship with one of their property managers, actually, like their property management maintenance executives, and we're looking at some other projects with them too. So again, it's relationships. You get a call, you just make sure you do what you can to show value, and there's some huge opportunity there for sure. But yeah, we try to leverage ourselves with larger companies that really can see our value, and it's not really a price. Everybody's got a price, but the service that we offer is so much different than that, because for 35 years we've had to maintain a 97% customer satisfaction in order to continue a relationship. Because these companies are referring out us as an organization to their homeowners, to the commercial and whoever, and so if we mess up, that's a reflection on them, right? So for the simple fact that we're able to do that on a consistent basis, USAA and just different organizations, I mean Chubb, whoever, that's pretty tough to do day in and day out. So I just wanted, in doing our videos, showcase that to our customers, and again parlay that into some other industries that we haven't really tapped their toe into. So that's about it, man. So we've talked about where you're at now. What do you do for fun? What do you like to do for fun?
For fun, I mean, I like to exercise a lot. I run quite a bit, but something I've been focused on the last few years is writing.
Okay.
Like I really want to write movie scripts, and so I'm about 80 pages into my first one, and I've got probably 14 other ideas behind this first one. And I'm lucky that I'm in an industry where I can, at some point make a lot of money. And so I'm hoping to self-produce and finance my own movies, at least the first few. So that's.
Oh, we got a videographer, man. He does music videos, movies, all kind of stuff. So fresh out of UNT.
I need to get the first draft done.
Yeah,
But I'll get your card.
Short film.
Oh no, full. It's at least 2 hours, if
Really?
not like 210, 215. I don't like 90-minute
Oh,
movies.
wow. So give us a taste of what is this first one kind of?
So it's a romantic comedy, but it kind of revolves around. So when I started dating, I didn't have a smartphone. This is back in like college and grad school. And so I was asking girls out the old fashioned way, walking up and talking to them. And then I moved to Dallas and, got my first, big boy job and could afford a smartphone, and I needed one for my job.
Yeah.
And then things like Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge are there. And, there's a lot of things you see on there that I think are pretty comical. I think a lot of people would say they're pretty funny. So just, weaving in a story about, a guy coming of age, meeting a girl he wouldn't have met otherwise if not for the app, and then kind of the story that happens. I can't really give too much away.
Yeah, no, but that's cool. There's cool treatment behind it. That's interesting. Do you have any friends in that industry, or just a love for movies and that kind of?
Yeah, one of my earliest memories was watching a movie and being forced to go to sleep, and then waking back up to go watch the movie. But also my brother during summers, he would take care of me. He was 6 years older, so he'd kind of babysit me when I was real young. Mm-hmm. And all we would do was watch movies. Okay. Indiana Jones, the series, Ghostbusters 1 and 2, Star Wars, Star Trek, like anything and everything.
Okay.
And so also it was kind of my family's thing to do. Friday nights, we'd go to Blockbuster when that was around.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we'd get 3 or 4 movies, stay up all night watching them. And then Saturday morning, we'd go to like the first showing at, 11 a.m. as a family. And it just became a thing, and we started talking kind of critically about movies, and I've always kind of written stuff. And so also my brother's working to be a fiction writer, so it just kind of runs in the family, I guess.
That's awesome. So would you say, like, as a part of your content strategy, we're kind of putting on my consultant hat, you should do movie critiques?
I'd say I'm actually using kind of social media now to kind of learn, at least practice shooting and getting shots. Okay. So I'm intentionally, I'm going to start shooting films for, Metcap, but I'm using that so I can kind of learn also down the line when I want to get a certain shot or scene in one of my movies. I'm using it for fun and for work.
No, but I'm saying, like, you were talking about LinkedIn and putting out content.
Well, I'd say I have blogs I put out for work, and I usually put some kind of meme or GIF or something that's related to a movie. So like I had one a while back where I referenced Jerry Maguire or A Few Good Men, an Aaron Sorkin movie. So I usually try to tie the title of the blog as well as a picture to a movie that I like.
That's what's up. I like that. So what's the name of your blog? You say you have a blog?
It's not like a specific to me. It's more of a Metropolitan Capital Advisors blog.
I gotcha.
So each of our senior directors puts something out, usually if not quarterly, biannually, and each blog topic is different. It might just be kind of flavor of that quarter. If interest rates rose or dropped, we talk about that. Brexit's going on, we talk about that. The election's coming up. Probably talk about how that could affect rates or the real estate market. So just kind of, or if a new transaction happened with a new property type. And I wrote one about, kind of creative office and co-working and kind of the differences between those two products.
Speaking of that, what do you think about this whole WeWork thing?
I mean, it's interesting that, they had kind of all these leases really kind of, creating value. But at the end of the day, I think, I kind of don't want to comment on it because I'm in the space.
Okay, I get it. I get it. I don't want to put you in
it doesn't look good for Adam right now.
Yeah,
but that's apparent.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, the model is definitely getting poked holes through right now.
I mean, I guess I see it more coming to life on a micro scale. We're going to have operators that create good value and a good space at a local level start expanding. I think he probably grew way too fast, and I think it could bite him and the industry in the ass.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest concern I kind of have is what happens with WeWork in the next 6 to 9 months. Because they were going to file an IPO at a massive valuation. Now they're not.
That's right.
And also there were a bunch of questions brought up. There's one really good article I read that was, kind of questioning the groups that were taking the IPO on. How did one day they had this, multi-billion-dollar valuation, and then a month later it's a fraction of that. What they're valuing the company at. Were their assumptions wrong? Could we really believe these groups going forward the next time they bring a company out?
Wow.
That's interesting. It makes you question the whole process.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at SoftBank was very influential in that. And so they're probably thinking, well, Uber's not making the money and this company's not making money they invest in. So they're trying to be, the leader in the market, but you can't, that's not like a technology or it's just, they've tried to buy some technology companies to support that IPO, but anyways, we won't deep dive into that because I know that's.
I think though the kind of new trends are interesting in real estate is so like Travis, who was at Uber, who founded it, he's left to go start a real estate company based kind of around ghost kitchens.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Where are you seeing? Is it just super? It's beta right now.
It's super. I mean, it's very kind of quiet right now. But I drive around a lot. I know a lot of guys in a lot of different cities, and so I'm working with developers down in Austin who are talking about it, and other cities around. And it's coming. And I think given the way we're all starting to take on food and buy food really and save time by ordering through Uber Eats or any of these apps, that it's just going to become a kind of a cost equation for these companies where they can pay a fraction of the cost for an industrial kitchen.
So it would be like Popeyes buying space at this ghost kitchen?
Yeah, well, so the ideal situation would be kind of a long building with kind of slotted kitchens.
Yep.
And sometimes they also share spaces, but this is Popeyes, this is Taco Bell, this is McDonald's. And so it's a centralized place, usually probably if they can get it in some place to, residential neighborhood or downtown, just where there's a lot of people ordering food.
Yeah.
But where, a driver can just come up, pick up the order and go.
Right. So it's kind of like what you're seeing with Amazon and their warehouse. They're doing that with food.
Well, I mean, it's cheap. I mean, think about it. It's cheaper, it's incredibly cheaper to do or to lease an industrial space than it is to do the finish out of any kind of retail location.
Makes sense, yeah.
So, also it's been creating a bottleneck at a lot of the restaurants where you have these lines of, people coming in and just picking up food.
That's right.
Getting in the lines with the people who are coming in to actually sit down and eat. And so just to alleviate that pressure, I kind of heard one statistic that said, upwards of, getting to like 80% of the foot traffic going through these restaurants is these people just picking up food.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of disrupting the natural flow of, or intent of the retail location.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If they can put that there and also decrease the amount of their retail footprint, save on rent there, and transfer it to an industrial location.
What do you think about, we're kind of touching on a little bit of a lot of things here, but what do you think about the whole retail space? I came out of the big retail organization, the malls and that kind of thing. What do you think the future is for that?
I mean, malls are one segment because they're large and they're going more experiential. And so I think they can somewhat insulate themselves. Also, it is an experience. I remember as a kid, going with my family to the mall and we could spend a day there and it was a fun thing. But I'd say, retail is going through a transition where we're going to have smaller footprints and, the things that are really going to last are either experiential or something that's walkable.
Yeah.
And so Dallas, my personal take is Dallas is still on the cusp of becoming, more walkable. I live in Uptown.
Okay.
I can walk, within a mile, but I don't want to walk a mile, but I can walk to a bunch of bars, a bunch of restaurants.
Yeah.
But New York, you walk down one street, there's everything you need.
That's right.
You can shop for clothes, you can buy, you can, go to an entertainment venue. We're getting closer and closer to that. But I think that's kind of why we see like these little neighborhoods where you have Bishop Arts, you have Deep Ellum, you have Uptown, where they have their own kind of micro community where there's a movie theater, there's the bars, there's the restaurants, and there's the shops, but it's local to those little communities.
I used to live down at Adam Hat's.
I was looking to move in there not too long ago. I like the location.
Yeah, Adam Hat's. I lived there 15 years ago, but my apartment was like facing the highway, and you could see downtown. It's a great building. It's like just a cool loft space. So that's it, man. That's the end of the show. We usually don't like to run it this long, but it's been so great. We'll definitely have to have you for some recaps on what you got going on here in the future. But I really enjoyed having Duke, and got some knowledge myself, which I typically do on these podcasts, and look forward to maybe doing it again in the coming weeks. Like I said, we got some other things that we have cooking with Specialty Live, and then I'm also thinking of putting together like a bourbon and business kind of a deal that a lot of people are interested in. So good to have you, man.
Thanks,
Thank
yeah.
you.